Thank you.
Now, would you like to start with the hot food or have a look over there? Like the cereal?
No, I'll start with the food, yeah.
Okay, I'll just grab you a couple of
Excellent. Hi there. Well, coming out of the Metropole, I can't say it's the best of conditions today. We'll go for a quick jaunt up and down the main street, Katoomba, try and keep the camera lens dry, which is always a challenge. And then we'll get on the train, hopefully to a less saturated Dubbo. So as you can see, the Metropole is across the road from the railway station, perfectly positioned. Katoomba is the chief town of the Blue Mountains and home to its administration. Home to the Gundungurra and Darug peoples for many years, white settlement came to the region in the 1870s, initially based around quarrying and mining activities. With the arrival of the main Western Railway line in 1874 and prevalence of beautiful natural features, the industrial beginnings soon gave way to Katoomba's rise as a tourist resort, with many significant buildings constructed between 1880 and the early 1900s. These include the heritage-listed Carrington Hotel, which is currently shrouded here in the mist. The town is known for its alternative culture. There's no McDonald's in sight. But enough with the history lesson, let's go catch the train. Like many things in Katoomba, the railway station is largely original, with the station building dating to 1891. This waiting room has seen millions of passengers. These indicator boards have been spun over thousands of times, and the scheduled train departure times have been run late, as they are today, by probably decades. I went for a little walk around and then had a look inside the signal box, which is 120 years old. As the waiting continued, my camera somehow invited a conversation with the kind of fellow passenger that is ubiquitous to train travel in this country. Do you go on the train often, or?
No, because I lost my licence.
Oh, right.
And so for 12 weeks.
Fair enough.
So I'm kind of having a bit of a holiday. I run a taxi truck business, actually.
Yep.
And things are quite slow at the moment. And at the moment, work is just usually Wednesday, Thursday, where I pick up business. But I do have a job on Monday to go.
Running just in front of, and therefore delaying, the Dubbo XPT today was an all-stations V-set, heading for Lithgow. When it pulled up, I decided to go and ask the guard if he knew whether we'd be able to get past and make up a bit of time. You know if you're going to stay in front of the XPT, or? You wouldn't have a...
I don't control shit like that.
Yeah, okay.
Out of my pay grade.
But they never ring... Yeah, okay. Signaller doesn't talk to you anymore. I suppose you can talk to the driver, don't he?
I know. Well, you're hard luck at that.
Well, stay out of the weather.
Oh, well, yeah, I'll try. All right. See you later, mate.
See you, mate.
Well, it's apparently there's two issues at Blacksland. One is water on the line, and two is voltage problem.
Oh, okay.
And so they have to travel slowly so they don't drag too much power out of the box.
RD. Might have to open the door.
Try.
Curve makes it a bit of a challenge.
63, we've got the right platform.
Yeah, 50 something.
Oh, yeah, right here, so.
Where's my pen, Mum?
You see any pairs? I'd like to see pairs.
And so it was. I was finally aboard and did my best to settle into my seat. It perhaps wasn't the best that the person in front of me had their chair fully reclined. And as you'll hear many times over the first half of this film, it probably also wasn't the best that that person happened to be an understandably bored and tired 3 or so year old. But hey, this is economy, warts and all. And I don't want anyone to be under the illusion that economy travel on government-funded railways will be anything like sitting in a moving library. Certainly, in libraries, you don't tend to find a half-eaten banana on the seat next to you. So, after disposing of that, I went to go and wash the hand, and was made to look a little silly at first. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's fallen for that before.
World famous zigzag railway at the end of the 10 tunnels. You'll know that the airport is working again. We do apologise for this very small inconvenience, but as you can see, we do need that bit of air so that we can actually have that light working. Thank you.
Just before our descent off the mountains, we heard this likely rail fan of a passenger attendant talking about gaps in reception for the credit card reader as we passed through the 10 tunnels. Luckily I was recording. We then passed this heritage train coming back from an excursion trip. Oh, that was fortunate. The 10 tunnels, so named because there are 10 of them, was opened in 1910, and they replaced an earlier attempt at range descent via the use of a time-consuming zigzag arrangement. The zigzag railway is still around, and whilst it was a frustrating way of moving freight and passengers in a fledgling country, it does work out very well as a heritage operation, as they can justifiably take a long and satisfying amount of time to cover quite a short distance.
Mom, read it, Mom. Mom, read it.
Lithgow is the first town at the western foot of the Blue Mountains, and this is where the electrification ends. In days gone by, this would often mean a short wait whilst the electric 46 or 86 class locomotive was swapped out for some diesels. But today, electrification is used only by suburban and interurban rolling stock in New South Wales. Out of Lithgow, and we pass the remains of the Wallerawang power station, which is in the process of being demolished. The steady, dependable power of the coal-fired steam turbine now out of favour due to emissions. Between Wallerawang and Bathurst, the Western Main takes the scenic route. The track distance is 30% greater than that of the road, and the alignment is still very similar to the one first laid out in the early 1870s. Believe it or not, the most recent major change to this part of the line was the removal in some sections of the track duplication, due to the intercontinental freight trains being rerouted to run via Katoomba. So, as it is, today we ride on what might as well be a heritage railway, our 160km/h train meandering through curve after curve at around 70 km/h. But it wasn't all bad. The clouds were clearing, and we were in a region that a fellow train driver once described to me as the most picturesque scenery in the state, passing through quaint railway towns that time and progress forgot, like Rydal and Tarrana. As the weather improved, we all settled in. I briefly moved to another seat to catch some air and watch the late summer fields roll by as Mount Panorama and Bathurst came into view. With my spirits just starting to improve, I then received a text message that put me firmly back in my place. Yes, no, indeed. Unfortunately, it's an all too common reality. You see, I had never planned this as Dubbo and back in a day. I'm not, after all, a sadist that wants to spend 12 hours sitting in a sitting carriage. But my reality of New South Wales train link is this: about 1 in every 3 trips I've ever booked, going back to 2012, have ended up with the train cancelled and the trip replaced by a bus. And if you think an economy class carriage is a zoo, well, just imagine being seat belted in for 6 hours.
We are running approximately 24 minutes behind schedule. This is due to earlier weather problems over the mountains which affected our signalling. As a result, we are 24 minutes behind schedule. Our next heading down station will be Blayney at 2 minutes past 12. Milford at 12 minutes past 12. Orange at 12:25. Stewarttown at 12:59. Wellington at 1:20. Geary at 1:36. And Dubbo, where the service will terminate approximately 1:58 this afternoon. These times are approximates, ladies and gentlemen. Announcements will be made prior to arrival at each station. For those passengers connecting coach services of Orange and Dubbo, please be rest assured those coaches will not depart until the arrival of this service.
So for me, the motivation was to get back on this train on this day. This means that when we get to Dubbo, I'm only going to have a very short amount of time to change my ticket to return today. It's simply going to be a matter of them changing the direction of the seats, giving it a quick clean, and we'll be departing. So I'll have to be Johnny on the spot at the ticket office when we get there. At Blayney, the flavour of the day continued, and I received a phone call letting me know that a family member had passed away and that I would be very soon required to travel interstate to attend to the situation. As sad as it was, it did perhaps put into perspective my feelings of the situation. Maybe heading home today, as opposed to tomorrow, was a blessing in disguise. Another blessing was the fact that after Blayney, the curves and gradients eased, and the speed and sense of progress increased. After passing through Orange after midday, the scenery changed and there was some evidence that the region is one of the coldest in New South Wales. Not that that's saying much. Passing through a location now. The name of it is Dripstone. I think that just about sums up the mood. Now you might have wondered why you haven't seen me eat anything yet. Well, not on the train anyway. With the cramped confines of my seat, the general mood, and the unknown of whether I'd be able to arrange my ticket in time when we got to Dubbo, I just didn't feel like eating anything yet. But don't worry, that's still to come. For now, it was just sitting back, watching small whistle stops like Stewarttown and Guri go by, and counting down the miles to go.
Just got in anyway, just got in the pub. $5 though.
Not all that interested in duck eggs, I made my way onto the platform and, after a quick pan around, made a move towards the ticket office.
Ladies and gentlemen, reminding passengers travelling with the XPT this afternoon, this service has to be clean and an announcement will be made when you may board.
The original station building, like many in New South Wales, is quite ornate and speaks to a time when the pride of the district was in its railway.
Hey, mate. Hey, I booked to go back tomorrow, but I don't want to go on the coach, so I just come up. So, any chance we can get back on this train?
You got your reference number there?
Yeah, mate. I'll get it for you.
Yeah, you want to still go first class today?
If I can. No, and I don't even know. Does this thing have a day setters on it, or no? All right. And can I? Yeah, another question for you. Can I extend that to Strathfield, please? Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, 'cause I was going to stay the night and go back tomorrow, but I've had enough coach experiences to last me. Thanks, mate. Well, after 10 minutes in Dubbo, we're back, ready to get back on and head back. But the return journey is in first class. So we'll see how we go.
As I stretched my legs on the platform, ticket in hand, I was confronted with what I'd just avoided the next day. But with that came a sense of realisation that for many of these people, the vagaries of government-organised travel are what they rely on to get around, to see their families, or to access health services. Ultimately, I'm doing this out of self-interest, but for others, cancellations and long bus rides to faraway places like Burke, Brewarrina and Lightning Ridge are a way of life.
Well, I can probably almost see the place I was meant to stay tonight. It's down that way, the Castlereagh Hotel. I'll have to come back another time. unfortunately, circumstances dictate that sometimes plans have to be flexible. But this is Dubbo. It's hot. It's certainly hotter than it was at Katoomba. I'm not wearing that spray jacket anymore. That's for sure. Time to get on. First class it is. What is this? Screen door. No idea what that's about. Yeah, dude. 45. Look at that. I actually picked the right end to get on too, which is good. That's the window. We'll see if we get it by myself. So, first class. Slightly different coloured seats. Slightly more pitch. Slightly more recline, although without a cantilever feature, it's not going to be the most useful thing in the world. But let's see if we can't have a decent trip back.
A further announcement will be made after we leave Bathurst Station with our onboard menus this evening for our dinner reservations. And an announcement will be made later on in the journey. Once again, the buffet in car C is now open.
So, just after 2 o'clock, I was now heading in the right direction. Dubbo is home to 30,000 odd people and is focused around agriculture, with the town acting as a hub for the Arana region of New South Wales. The town is also reasonably well known for the Western Plains Zoo, where you can see a variety of endangered African animals. Maybe this meme is a little cruel, but it was my lived experience today. Ahead of me were 6 hours of travel back to Strathfield, where my time on the XPT would end. And of course, now that things were looking up, my stomach returned to form.
Hey mate, how you going? Good. Oh yeah.
With the pie, I found nothing to complain about. It was hot, the pastry was crisp, and it hit the spot until dinner time. At $6, the prices may be creeping up, but given the perspective of being served on a moving train, the ticket price of which in first class was only around 70 Australian dollars, I think I can bear it.
Your crew member will assist you from the train. Stuart Gunner next.
My experience in first class compared to economy earlier was a different one. The carriage was almost empty and I had hardly anyone sitting around me. This made the trip back quite an unremarkable one, and I was content doing what you do on trains, sitting and watching the country roll by. The windows of the XPT, designed well before our now connected societies, are coated in a copper glazing, which gives them an orange glow. What that copper also helps to do is turn the train into a giant Faraday cage, and mobile phone reception is only available when you're right in the middle of a large town. So, there will be few disruptions, but also few opportunities to check what's going on outside of the steel bubble. As we left Bathurst on the return, I watched as the skies once again built up and we returned into patchy weather. The rain was just about closing in when we passed back through Tarrana with its 150-year-old railway station and junction to the closed branch line up to Oberon, sitting at an elevation of 1,104 metres. And not too long after that, we heard that our dinner meals had been reheated. You might remember another video where I got the spaghetti bolognese and found it to be somewhat ordinary. Well, I wasn't going to fall for that again. I figured that as to some people, XPT stands for Express Pensioner Train, the roast options should, after over 40 years of service, be a little sharper. So for me this time it was pork. They even gave me an extra roll, which was nice. I found the meal to be straight ahead and well executed. The pork was moist and seasoned, vegetables weren't too floppy, and the bread roll was crisp. If you thought the pie was a little too expensive at $6, well, this offering at $10.50 or $12 with the drink seems somewhat more reasonable. For the second and final time for the day, we passed through Lithgow and started our trip over the Blue Mountains. The issues of the morning seemingly having been resolved, we powered through the 10 tunnels, past Mount Victoria, and before too long I was back where I started, at Katoomba. But this time I stayed on the train into the darkness, winding down the mountains through Springwood and Glenbrook.
Arriving at Penrith Station, our next stop in a few moments' time.
After Penrith, we were on the Speedway, a flat and straight piece of track historically used for testing train performance, and one of few locations in the state where this train would be capable of reaching its top service speed of 160 km an hour. But today, the monsoonal rains of the past 48 hours had different ideas, and our speed was cut considerably. After Parramatta, I was all too happy to be out of my seat and waiting for Strathfield, where, if the XPT was on time, I'd have all of 2 minutes to get down and around to platform 2 to catch a V-set back to my home Newcastle. Some days, the luck is with you. Today was not that day, but I was happy to have been to Dubbo and back, see some sights, have some laughs, and for it to be over. Thanks for watching if you've made it all the way through. The 1 hour wait at Strathfield and 2.5 hour run back to Newcastle to midnight is another story, but it's bye for now.